Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome you to Bosco Online Webinar, and we welcome you at this online workshop about company setup, payment systems, and crypto payments as well. Allow me to share my screen and show you a bit more information about Bosco. So Bosco Conference is well known for annual international VIP class conferences, Invest Pro and Wealth Pro, which the company holds in the countries of the European Union, the Middle East, the Baltic states, and Eastern Europe. The company has been on the market for more than 17 years. The company's speakers and partners are the world's leading experts in corporate and banking services, asset protection and confidentiality, private capital management in international legal structures, business immigration, and citizenship. Today, our program is starting with this welcome speech. My name is Viktoria Soltesz. I'm the moderator of the conference today. I'm the founder of PSP Angels. It's a payment consultancy company, but I will explain everything to you later. But we have today here with us Johannes Schwarz from Switzerland, who is the CEO of Zugimpex, and he will tell us a bit more about forming Swiss companies with crypto wallets. It will be a half an hour presentation. After that, it will be followed by my presentation, where I will explain a bit more about how banks think and how to get accepted by safer and cheaper banking and payment providers. I hope that I can bring you some real life examples as well and answer all your questions. I will also mention a couple of words about the crypto-related payments, which are very, very popular subjects nowadays, how to overcome the banking issues. And then we will have a little Q&A session whereby we try to answer to all your questions together with Johannes regarding the crypto payments, wallets, company formation, and all other areas that we can reply you to. So the first presentation from Johannes will be in a couple of minutes. Johannes Schwarz graduated from the Vienna University of Economics and made his MBA degree in St. Louis. And since he was 26, he started a consulting group, which under his management carried out more than 2,000 projects with over 800 customers. And in 2005, he sold the group in a management buyout. Then he started Zugimpex Group and expanded its offices into several countries, depending on the attractiveness of their business environment and taxation system. Zugimpex business centers in several countries facilitate your location planning. You can immediately use their infrastructure and enjoy their reliable service for company formation and administrative support. Their customers get fair conditions, clear arrangement in advance, and no unpleasant surprises. So I'm really looking forward to listen to this presentation. After that, it will be followed by my presentation. A couple of words about myself. I am the founder of the payment consulting firm PSP Angels, which helps online businesses optimizing their payment flows and costs by finding the best payment and banking solutions. The website for that is pspangels.com. I'm also the partner of Oxygia, which is a boutique firm in Malta, which was created to improve the payment processing infrastructure for clients within specifically in the iGaming industries. And I also run my finance and tax consulting firm in Cyprus for over 14 years now. So yes, I started off as an accountant. I have experience with high-risk industries, and I used to work as a chief financial officer with various fintech and e-commerce companies. And I also used to lecture at the University of West London, and I'm a regular speaker at blockchain, fintech, and different investment conferences. And I'm also a member of the director chambers. The conference today will be online. We have more than 250 participants already with us. We have these two speakers, Johannes and me, and we would like to encourage you to take participation in our active question and answers session. At the end of the presentations, there will be around 20-30 minutes to reply to all of your questions. And we present the webinar today into languages English and Russian. We have simultaneously translating the webinar, so I think that there is a button on the conference where you can click and change the language. So I really hope that you will enjoy the webinar today. Thank you very much. And then I pass over the word to you, Johannes. Let's start today's webinar. Thank you very much.
So hello, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I share now the screen. My presentation is about Switzerland, how to make company information with a crypto wallet. Now I'm the owner of the Zugimpex group. My person was already introduced in a very nice way. Thank you. What is the presentation about? About Switzerland, how it is now, the situation, political and so on. What are the benefits and forms of a Swiss company? Then, of course, tax planning, how to do it properly. Company information procedure, general information, company information, the critical points. Then how to make it with contribution in kind of a crypto wallet. And when the company is formed, what you need, a bank, and eventually a residence. So, situation in Switzerland. No change of political stability. You see, even the Swiss franc went up. There's a permanent coalition in the government, and the referendum rule is the secret. That means when the government decides something and the parliament approves, still the population has the right to make a referendum and avoid a negative influence in law. How is the situation with the European Union? Once there was bilateral one that allows free movement of people, restricted but still free. Bilateral two was more or less the contract where they agreed to join the Schengen. It's still working. Now Switzerland had stopped the negotiations with the European Union to make a framework agreement. Nobody knows if they start again, if they can find a common point or not. New tax law. In 2020, a new tax law was introduced. The first period, of course, was a little bit difficult, handing in a lot of tax declarations. Now it's the second year and it seems everything works fine. And then there are the typical topics which you hear everywhere. COVID-19, will it come again? Ukraine, what is the effect? And energy questions. That's the environment. Now, legal environment about blockchain regulation. Other countries, like Malta, where I live, they made a lot of propaganda, but finally only a few companies got a license. In Switzerland, you have more than 1,000 operating companies in the blockchain and crypto area. Half of them are members of the crypto valley Zug, where our office is. The Financial Market Authority, more and more issues clear guidelines, and if somebody wants to make a company, they have a questionnaire, this can be filled in, then sent to the financial market authorities, and they confirm if no license is required. The secret is they have a good lawyer who helps to prepare the questionnaire so that the answer will be that no license is required. In many cases, a self-regulatory organization is sufficient. So there are opportunities, the demand is booming. What is the benefit of a company in Switzerland? Well, one benefit is simply the image to have a company as such, but also the image which you can use for products and services. It's easier to sell and you get a better price. Then there's the advantages legal system. The system is more liberal. Many things are allowed that are not so easy somewhere else. Then one point is companies in the European Union must disclose their financial data to a certain degree. When there's a Swiss company, the Swiss company needs not to disclose the financial data in Switzerland. And if the Swiss company has an EU branch, then the level of obligation to disclose depends on the main seat. So an EU branch of a Swiss company needs not to disclose their financial data in the EU because the Swiss main seat has no such obligation. That is heavily used by companies who have one large customer and who don't want that the customer knows that they are depending on him. And then there are, also in Switzerland, there's the vicinity to Swiss customers. So that are the benefits. What are the main legal forms? Most of you know. There's the share company. Main difference, 100,000 share capital, 50,000 minimum must be paid in. And the registration of the shareholders is not seen public, just at the domicile. Then the GmbH. Here you have 20,000 share capital. All shareholders are registered in the commercial register. Third form is the branch of a foreign entity that has some tax advantages and you don't need to pay in a capital. And last, very often is the demand for a foundation. Many projects had a foundation where investors paid in with an ICO. And then the money was given to a company to make the programming and like this. But recently there was a negative judgment. In some crypto cases, the basic idea was investors do not donate, but expect a return. Therefore, the foundation is not non-profit. That are the legal forms. Now, before we start to form a company, before you start to form a company, it's important to have an idea of tax planning. There are three areas where tax planning is important: the corporate income tax, social security contributions, and withholding tax. The corporate income tax, how can you reduce it? Choose the right canton, negotiate cost positions in advance so that you know this and this and this will be deductible and that will be accepted. Eventually, it's possible to make management and control outside Switzerland, because then management fees can have, of course, a higher amount. And there's still a benefit from tax-free capital gains, but there are restrictions. Also, when you plan a system with tax-free capital gains, make sure that you can get the money out on the other side. Social security contributions, they are really high in Switzerland. The percentage is low, but there is no top limit. So when you earn 20 million, you have to pay more than 2 million on social security contributions. There are two ways to avoid it. So it's only social security contributions are only on private persons who get money from the company, of course. First, to avoid it, a legal entity abroad that invoices, for example, directors' fees, or using this regulation 883/2004 for the coordination of social security systems. It is possible to move the country of competence to another, of the natural person to another country, and then to benefit from the social security regime of that other country while receiving the money from Switzerland. Withholding tax Here the authorities are quite strict. Withholding tax, general rule, it's tax 35%. Some double tax treaties reduce it in Article 10. The dividends to private individuals, in most cases, however, are still 15%. In addition, most countries of residence tax the recipients of dividends, and only a few countries give credit on Swiss withholding tax. The personal liability of board members is still there, therefore fiduciaries are very much afraid to pay out money, and we receive a lot of requests from potential customers who say, Mr. Schwarz, what shall I do? I earn 2 million euro, 600,000 euro are blocked, I cannot get my money. Can you help me? Yes, we can help. I cannot now explain how it works. How to avoid or reduce withholding tax. First rule, no private ownership of shares by foreign residents if there is a profit. Then holding can be in a country with a zero rate. In Article 10 double tax treaty, there are about 15 countries. An alternative is a Swiss branch of a foreign entity, or because there's a branch remittance is no taxable activity. Article 15 interest rate convention between Switzerland and the EU also allows to pay out dividends after it's approved, tax-free, from a Swiss company to a EU company. However, the EU company needs substance and the beneficial owner needs to have residence in the EU country. And last, the company makes little profit, for example, because of a cooperation contract or a profit-sharing agreement. That's the tax planning. Now, how to make a company in Switzerland? Well, the general rule is quite similar to other countries. You have to prepare the articles of association, the confirmation of the future management that he will take on the job, the confirmation of the place that the company can have its seat or domicile there, the confirmation of the capital that the money is really there. That can be a bank certificate or an audit certificate in case of disformation in kind. Then there are documents to be signed by the future management, for example, the application to the commercial register and some declarations that the company will accept the rules not to buy private real estates that belong to foreigners. With all these documents, a memorandum of association will be signed at the notary. This can be signed by the shareholders or by somebody of our office with a power of attorney. And then this pack of document goes for registration to the commercial register. Usually they register within 10 days at the canton, and then 3 days later it's visible at the Federal Register. The website is zefix.ch. Now there are 3 points that are important regarding company formation, because that are the points where we often have questions. First, capital injection. That has to be with a blocked bank account at a Swiss bank. They are regulated. Extensive compliance is natural. Alternative, there can be a formation in kind. Article 634, Swiss Code of Obligations. It's in the internet. You can Google it. And there's still an alternative to take over a company. This is a good alternative if a history of the company is beneficial. Then who shall be the management? I often heard, Mr. Schwarz, I was told management must live in Switzerland, or at least one of the management. Well, that's not exact. Management can be from every country. Just if no board member is resident in Switzerland, Swiss resident with signature rights is required. This person, however, needs not to be a board member. It's for the share company, Article 718, and for the GmbH, it's 814, Swiss Code of Obligations. They say the company must be represented by the management or by a director. However, the function of a director is not defined exactly, so you can make a contract that the director just represents the company at the Bosco conference, and so the director has no right to see financial data, the director has no right to do anything at the bank, and so on. There's also a way to avoid that this Swiss resident person even knows where the bank account is. For all this, we do not recommend fiduciary services. We have a license in one of our companies, but we always tell the clients, listen, better we don't earn money and the customers are happy, because fiduciary means to pay a lot, to have their good people as a management. However, they don't have time when you need them. And of course, there's a conflict of interest between the fear of the regulator and, on the other hand, the wish of the customer. So, in fact, you pay for bureaucracy, and if you are the director yourself or somebody who is employed, you pay for business. Now, last point, the domicile. In Switzerland, when somebody has a registered office, this is seen in the commercial register as a CO address. Then there's the possibility to have a full address with a rental agreement. Sometimes people rent an office and that office is larger. So the commercial register would accept a sub-rental agreement. So in some of our cases, we manage to put some customers together who rent an office together when they need a full address. A full address rarely helps, but there are cases where it's beneficial, sometimes for a certain bank. Now, after having explained this, we go to details for the capital injection account. That's the regular way to make a company. To open a blocked bank account for the capital payment, to pay in the capital, the bank issues a certificate, and the certificate is used at the notary. This needs to be regulated at a regulated Swiss bank, and this is a special bank account. So it needs to be at a Swiss bank, and it doesn't help if you have just a bank account there. They must open a special account on the name of the company in formation, and then they have their full compliance procedures. To open such an account is usually easy possible for people who live permanently in Switzerland, and they have, for example, they have a plumbing company and they want to make a second company, it's no problem. However, it's quite difficult for foreigners. Sometimes it's possible for foreigners who have already a bank deposit. Because when somebody has their, whatever, 10 million euro, then they say, listen, I want the 20,000 euro for a GmbH. The bank usually make no obstacles. When such an account is opened, the payment must come exactly from the private account of the shareholder, not from another account, not from a company and not from a third party. And in case of several shareholders, that has to be exact in the relation to the shareholder. If not, the bank sends the capital back, they charge a lot of fees, and they make a lot of issues. To avoid all this, a good way, which 80% of our customers now do, is to use contribution in kind of a wallet. That goes the following way. First, create a crypto wallet. Should be, of course, at a well-established provider, paying the capital, usually in stable coins. A little bit higher amount is recommended. And then such a crypto wallet has a private key and a public key, and the public key is then given to the auditor so he can control that the money is really there. What documents do we need? Article 634 Code of Obligation defines them. First, a contribution in kind agreement. That's an agreement between the founders and the company that will be founded. And this agreement more or less confirms the founder gives the assets and the company will be able to dispose on it when it's formed. Then there must be a formation report that states the exact nature and valuation of the assets, and an audit certificate where the Swiss licensed auditor confirms the content of the formation report. Later, when the company is formed, the management can use the wallet, but only for purposes of the company. It's a crime in Switzerland to refund the money to the shareholders. This can be only by liquidation or by dividends. However, a loan is possible as long as some interests are paid. How to get rid of the crypto assets? Well, you can change them or also, for example, make tax payments or ask other people that you can pay their tax and they pay you the money. There are several ways. Some details. The contribution must cover, of course, the nominal value of the shares in francs. And there are three key dates. First, when you're at the notary. Second, when the cantonal register registers it. And third, when the federal register registers it a few days later. Therefore, a certain reserve is necessary when these assets fluctuate, even stable points fluctuate. What happens if there is a higher amount? There are two ways of booking the difference. The difference can be booked like the company has a credit of the difference to the shareholders, or it's allocated in the so-called capital contribution reserves. And this is an account which then can be paid out to the shareholders later without a lot of bureaucracy. Then there are some special guidelines what assets have to, regarding the quality of the assets. They must be liquid, transferable, available, usable. So that means that the company, when it's formed, really has the possibility to use these assets. Now, when I talked before that the capital of in a payment account cannot be paid, for the blocked bank account cannot be paid by the other people, here it's not so clear. So the contribution usually is accepted when a private person makes a wallet and then, for example, there are 3 shareholders. However, of course, the auditor also has some due diligence to do. Important it is to verify that the funds are really technically disposable to the director after the formation. And to prevent misuse, nowadays the commercial register always requires that not only the shareholders sign the contribution in kind agreement, but also the future management. So they are kind of bound that they check themselves if they will have the hand on the assets. No good things without a little point where we have to be careful. And these are the publication requirements. Why? There are customers, they say, I want to have a share company, so my shareholding is confidential because the share register is just at the place of the company and this can be in a locked safe deposit box. Now, the commercial register regulation really says that the contribution in kind as such has to be published, but not who contributes the funds. However, Article 628 Code of Obligation says that in such cases, the articles of association must show the object of the contribution in kind, its valuation, as well as the name of the contributor and the shares in which he is entitled. So the articles of association, they can be ordered even via web shop or in some cantons or via email. So if somebody wants to know who is the real shareholder or who is at least the first shareholder, he can ask for the articles of association. If the articles of association are changed quickly after the registration, it doesn't help. The commercial register requires for a long period of time that this information is available. So if the shareholders of the AG want to remain confidential and they use this system of contribution in kind, then another person shall be the first shareholder and then sell the shares to the new shareholder. Now the company is formed, certificates are there, what to do? Of course, open a bank account. Regular company account in Switzerland is possible. Banks are quite restrictive if nobody lives in Switzerland. However, it's possible. The Swiss law differentiates between active and passive companies. Active companies are easier to open a bank account. Passive companies are some that just administrate money or holdings. And the holdings are maybe also more money management. How is the reporting? The reporting from a Swiss bank may go to the country of residence if there is a passive company of the shareholder, of the beneficial owner. Usually the reporting from a foreign bank goes to Switzerland because there's the company with some exceptions. And interesting is, in Switzerland, there's a national law. So Swiss banks make no report about private accounts of Swiss residents. Now, Viktoria will tell a lot of banking. I just say a few words. In my opinion, the market of banking is a market where the banks like loans and asset management, there they earn a lot, and a company bank account with liquid cash is no business for them. Sometimes they even have to deposit the money somewhere and pay for that. It's like somebody who has a full inventory and the supplier comes and says, do you want more stock? They say, no, we don't know where to invest it. And because of this high liquidity in the market gives the bank the option to choose among the demand. Now, when people make a job application, nobody applies just 1 or 2 jobs. They apply 20, 30, 50, or 100. Similar, this procedure needs time and patience also at banks. Now, how to succeed to get a bank account? Prepare properly and have capacities. Prepare means make some research, prepare the documents and answers. Then avoid that your answers, documents, and the object of the commercial registry qualify as high risk. We got a request, for example, from a company. They had a terminology already in the company name, like war fighter or so. I don't say now the exact name. And then they were writing, they were providing special technologies for drones that can do this and this. Now, of course, such a company doesn't get any bank account. So we say avoid that the information which the banks will receive automatically will qualify the company as a high risk. And then also check all the people in advance, what can be found about these persons in the internet. Sometimes there are also research companies and databases, and it's good to know what is written about someone before the application is done, because in that case, eventually the person can be changed. Capacities. Important is also to plan capacities because it's time consuming and it's useful if employees can help and fill in all these forms if the information is there. Just the shareholder needs to sit, or the beneficial owner needs to sit next, because some of these payment providers, they make a physical comparison between the photo of the passport or document and the video. So you have to look into the video camera and say, yes, that's me. So plan the capacities and then apply in several rounds, because there's a learning process. I would say plan not just 2 or 3 applications, but 3 to 4 rounds times 5 to 6 applications. Then you're sure you have a bank account. Make sure 2 to 3 accounts are open at the end, because it's always a stress when an account is closed and you have no other one. But when you have 2 other accounts, there's no issue. You transfer the money to the other one, you continue. An additional topic is migration, especially now. There are several reasons, of course, for the residency. And now more and more people want to move to Switzerland. And how to get a residence. For EU citizens, employment gives a right to get a residence permit together with a rental contract and health insurance, while the other purposes of stay gives the government more discretion to check. So we recommend not to start as a self-employed or not to apply with their own company, because that raises more questions. However, it is possible to make a cooperation contract between the company of a customer who would need substance and their own company who will be formed. Now the employment is first at another company who needs the substance. This company works for their own company, and then after some months, when the residence permit is there, then the change can be made easily. That's for EU citizens. For non-EU citizens, there's a Schengen visa procedure, which you all know. And for migration of third country nationals, there's a quota of 8,500 persons per year. Usually, a part of it every quarter is possible. Decisions are on cantonal level and then federal approval. Priorities, of course, are qualifications, large enterprises, investments, such things. So that means it doesn't just depend on the applicant if it's approved or not. It often depends on the question which other applicants are in that canton. Sometimes it's simply necessary to apply one quarter after the next, and then one time it will be granted. So remember the overview of the presentation. I talked about the situation in Switzerland, about benefits and forms of Swiss companies, tax planning, the formation procedure to form a company, special topics, the directors, the capital, and the place, then how the contribution in kind works. By the way, it's not very expensive. While a normal notary costs about 600-700 francs, the formation in kind notary plus auditor costs 1,500 francs. So this can be afforded, of course, plus other costs, commercial register, us, like this. Then, when the company is formed, how to get a bank account, just not be lazy, and for those who want, how to get residence in Switzerland. I hope this presentation gives you a good overview. We are here to make good services for our customers, and here are my data. We are glad to assist you, and if you're a lawyer or an advisor, to assist your clients. Here is my name, my email address. Please don't hesitate to come to us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Johannes. It was a very, very interesting presentation, and thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We have a couple of questions, but I think we can reply to everything at the end of the event all together to wrap up everything that we mentioned. So thank you very much. Now I will share my screen and start my presentation. Before I start that, I wanted to mention that the Bosco conference has other very important and very interesting upcoming events, both offline and online. When we are talking about offline, in the next couple of days, they will just go on the 20th and 29th of September to Dubai for the Invest Pro conference, and then later on in November they will have a very nice conference in Poland and in Ukraine, in intercontinental in Poland. So I will speak to you about how to think like a bank and how to get accepted by the best payment providers and banks. This is a very, very up subject nowadays. Many of times that our clients are no longer interested in setting up, different tax optimizing structure, but the main aim is really of how to open bank accounts and how to channel the payments, because compliance became really, really rigid. So as I mentioned at the beginning, my name is Viktoria Soltesz, and I started up as an accountant. I still have my accounting, audit and fiduciary company, but I started to deal with payments around 5 years ago when I started PSP Angels to reply these questions of our clients. I'm also partnering up with Oxygia Consulting regarding iGaming and gambling issues, payment issues, and I'm a member of Director Chambers in Malta. I'm usually traveling. You can find me mainly in Cyprus, Malta, Hungary, and Spain. And a little known fact about me that I like to paint in my free times, and I have a cooking channel in Instagram. But when I mention PSP, I refer to payment service providers. So this is the name of the company as well, PSP Angels, here to help you. So what exactly that we do, what does PSP Angels does as payment consultants? Basically, we help online businesses who are classified as high risk, as Johannes mentioned. There are certain companies which are falling into the high risk category. We help them to open the merchant accounts, the Visa and MasterCard acceptance on the website, banking facilities, and obviously help them with different payment consulting, setting up the payment plan and planning the flow of funds when it comes to client funds or even moving money between different countries and continents. It could be quite a challenge. So if you focus on high risk verticals like Forex companies, gambling companies, crypto exchanges, crypto related blockchain projects, adult entertainment, Nutra pharmaceuticals. So basically everything who gets rejected by the banks, we try to explain them how banks work and why they got the rejections. So to understand how banks think, we need to mention how banks work. To understand what is the reason that banks got very, very strict nowadays, and they are giving us more headache than benefit, unfortunately. So the banks are semi-governmental institutions. So that means that through the banks, the government is controlling and affecting the economy in multiple ways. So we can call the banks as the backbone of the economy, because the banks are the ones who are controlling the different interest rates and forcing the legal flow of payments to support legal payment movements and encourage tax payments. So that means that through the banking system, the governments control how a healthy society is collecting the relevant tax payments and making sure that whatever payment is going through the banks, it's all legit, legal, and obviously monitored. That's why the banks need to have a certain kind of license, because if they are holding funds on behalf of a third party, they need to report back how much they are holding on behalf of the third party. What was the reason for that transaction? So overall, the governments need to understand that all the funds which are moving through their banking system is legit, supporting legal services and products, and also the relevant taxes are paid. So that's why the banks are always reporting back to the tax offices. When it comes to persons, individuals, or even businesses, there is no bank which is opening any kind of account without knowing your tax ID. And this is the reason, because they need to report it back to the tax offices. So the tax office is looking at your tax submission. They say that, according to this tax submission, you earned whatever, $10,000 this year. Bank is reporting indeed 10,000 and it's not 10 million. So then that's how they make sure that all the income is reported, therefore the taxes are paid. Now, the further burden comes when these card schemes are also imposed on certain kind of transactions. I'm talking about Visa, American Express, and MasterCard schemes, which are further complicating our life, but in order to maintain a healthy society and filter out all those kind of services and products which should not be sold online. So when we are talking about banks, obviously the banks are having the risk. So what is the bank's risk? What the bank wants to avoid? The bank simply wants to avoid the penalty for non-compliance, the lack of checks, and obviously in case that they are assisting in money laundering and tax avoidance, they will get the penalty. So again, this is a huge risk which is imposed on the bank. But as you can imagine, the bank still needs to generate profit. The bank is not a charity organization, so the bank still need to collect fees and payments to their operation. So what they do is that they chasing this so-called ideal client, the lowest of the risk, the highest of the volume, the crystal clear, understandable payment flow. This is what they call an ideal client, which generates their profit on the least amount of risk which they can still handle. So that results how banks think. They want to avoid the risk. So that's why we see in the last couple of years that the compliance is getting stricter and stricter, and we are talking about AML 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we are at AML 6, because they're fine-tuning all these compliance procedures. They are making more and more detailed and sure that everybody is paying their taxes and everybody is moving funds in a most legal and legit way possible. So they are putting companies in certain kind of risk categories, which are completely subjective. So for some banks or some payment institutions, crypto is more acceptable than for the others, maybe simply because the compliance person who is filtering out these transactions is more confident handling crypto transactions because they have more experience on that. It's not an overall agreed and accepted compliance procedure to put companies in different risk categories. It's completely on the bank's own decision who goes in what kind of risk category. Needless to say, startups are usually falling under a higher risk category simply because if I'm thinking about I'm the bank, I'm the guinea pig here. The startup is testing their products and services and operations on me. So I am having a higher risk because I don't have any track record of this client. They don't have any volume. I don't really know that they will, execute what they are talking about. So that's why startups are always falling under higher risk. But when we are talking about high-risk verticals, think about online businesses because there is no set jurisdiction where the operation is happening. It's global. There is no set target market where the clients are from. Again, it's global. Maybe some services are legal in Germany, but illegal in China. These online businesses are always opposing a higher risk for the operation, therefore, to the banks. But the bank is still trying to balance out their portfolio with the profit. So the bank always needs to make sure that they have a healthy mixture in their portfolio about lower and higher risk clients. So whose job is to monitor and maintain all of that. Obviously, the compliance's job is this. Back at the day, when we had just brick and mortar companies, there was only a legal department, there was only an accounting department, and everything which had to be done with payments or moving funds, it was falling under these two departments. But now, banks and even companies have a very strict compliance department, which is filtering out all these clients, all these money funds, and all the activities when it comes to payments. So that's why KYC, know your customer, and KYB, know your business, has to be checked almost in every case when we are talking about money flow at the onboarding. And companies even checking this to make sure that whoever is their client, whoever they are accepting money from, that money is coming from legit sources. As a rule of thumb, for compliance perspective, what they want to see is that we have a local company which is managed by a local director. Why? Because if we have a German company and this company is managed from, let's say, France, and the director is sitting in France, and the director is making decisions to the online business from France, why is the company in Germany? The company should be then paying French taxes, submitting French reports, and operate under the French rules and regulations. So that's why the tax planning and mainly obviously tax evasion, which is even illegal, has been very, very limited recently, because the banks want to make sure that if you have a company, there is a good reason why you set up that company in that jurisdiction. And the reply, why do you have a Cyprus company? Why do you have a Maltese company? Because I'm paying less tax, is not a reply. This is not what the banks want to see, because this means that they are helping the company of avoiding tax, and therefore they are cutting short of the income of the government, which should receive those kind of tax incomes. So the compliance also checks the target areas. Let's say that you've got a service or a product which is, as we mentioned, legal in one country, but it's illegal in another country. The bank is going to get the penalty in case that they are accepting money for a service which is illegal in a certain jurisdiction. So the compliance also checks not about where your company is set up, where are your directors, but also where is your target area? Who are your customers? To make sure that everything is as legal as possible. So many times the compliance is asking you for your license or legal opinion, because that means that there is an external party who checked your operation and gave the green light. So this reduces their risk, because then the responsibility is not on the compliance department and 100%, but also there is someone else to blame in case something goes wrong, because you've got a license or a legal opinion which proves that the company should have acted legally. So therefore, you as a financial institution made everything to avoid any kind of misunderstandings. Of course, when it comes to compliance, you collect the documents, but also you need to keep those records in files. So in case your regulator comes and does an audit, you can show that you did your due diligence tests and your due diligence procedures as it should be. And of course, you keep up-to-date records. So everybody who is your client, they know exactly as of today, who is the shareholder, who is the director, where do you live, and all the important information is up to date. Therefore, they need to do these continuous checks. So that's why the bank is checking up on you at least once a year, just to make sure that everything as it should be. So when we are talking about risk, we understand that when it comes to low risk, payment providers and banks want everyone who is low risk. Why? Because it's low risk and it pays the money. So the lower the risk, the better my appetite for these kind of companies. So obviously everybody wants these clients. So the fees for banking are most probably lower for these clients than the high risk companies. They usually have the good banks with the good technology who invested in the customer service, who invested in the technology, because there is a huge competition to serve these kind of clients. And quite the opposite. When we are talking about high-risk companies, these fees are higher. Usually we are dealing with startup banks or startup e-money institutions who did not really invest in the technology because in case that they got the penalty, they don't have that much of a thing to lose because there is a lower competition. There is a bigger demand than a supply. So therefore, the supply doesn't have to be top-notch in order to gain these clients. But obviously, banks are changing their risk appetite all the time based on their portfolio. When they are onboarding a lot of low-risk clients, then they have an increased risk appetite for the higher-risk clients, which brings more profit. And vice versa, when they have a lot of high-risk companies, many times the compliance says that, guys, we are no longer taking Forex companies, gambling companies, adult companies, because we have enough. Now we would like to onboard a supermarket, a shoe shop, or any kind of low-risk vertical. So just the risk appetite, the fees are also changing because they might also change their own correspondent banks. Don't forget that the banks are not directly dealing with each other because my bank, let's say in Bank of Cyprus, might not have a direct contact with the Bank of Philippines. So then they have to have a so-called correspondent banks and intermediary banks who are executing these lump sum of transactions between banks. This is like the communication channel between the banks. And obviously, the correspondent banks are also charging the fee, which then being charged to the client. So the fees can be also the results for the changing of the correspondent banks behind, who also have certain different kind of risk appetite. So when we are mentioning payments via crypto, we were thinking about that's great. Crypto is anonym, and then it's cheap, it's free, and no one tells me what to do. I can spend my money however I want to. Yes, these are the good things, but every good thing, unfortunately, comes with some kind of downfalls. There are certain problems with these kind of crypto transactions. First of all, the economical. What we mentioned, that currencies are used to affect political and economical decisions. When it comes to crypto, the government has no power of affecting the society's purchasing behavior through these economical parts. The demand and supply is completely based on the market conditions. So it gives a good opportunity for market manipulations when it comes to crypto whales, because the demand and supply is no longer controlled by the central government figure. Remember the Phillips curve. The Phillips curve is basically a correlation between the unemployment and the inflation, which is obviously out of the window when it comes to crypto, because there is no inflation as we speak about the fiat money when it comes to crypto. So when you're trying to control a society and make sure that the unemployment rate is affected by government and political decisions through the banking, you cannot really do that through crypto. And also the monetary base, the monetary decisions, how the investments are affected by increasing or decreasing the governmental central interest rate. Again, it cannot be executed when it comes to crypto because this is decentralized and not centralized. So there is a problem with a monopole situation, being the government, the monopole execution in these decisions. But on the other side, the monopole situation is very easily achieved when we are talking about crypto whales, or when we are talking about people who are holding a large sum of crypto assets and not really balancing out through the society. Now, the second issue with the crypto is the taxation. Obviously, the source and the funds and the traceability. Did you really pay taxes on these kind of crypto assets? There is no universal agreement on the status of the crypto assets. We don't really know if the government is considering them as an asset or an investment. Do they charge capital gains tax on that, or is it falling under the income tax? There is no certain rule and regulation which is globally accepted. Many countries are also restricting crypto assets usage. And on top of that, everything is changing all the time. So when it comes to taxation, the governments are in a very, very unlucky position to collect taxes on these crypto asset flows, because it's very hard to execute this. And the third problem is the regulatory, obviously. We need to filter out scams, and we need to block the black markets. This is the job of the government, to control these kind of illicit transactions, and make sure that the business are legitimate instead of illegitimate businesses, which is very, very hard with the crypto transactions. Also, we want to live in a society when everybody is following ethical business practices, right? But there is no remedy for victims if they are falling on the crypto scam or the security flows of a crypto exchange. Many times we see lost assets due to, for example, a last code, but these people, these individuals and businesses, unfortunately cannot be compensated by the government because there is no regulatory framework around that. So let's mention a couple of words about what we want to know, how to get accepted by better banks and cheaper providers, right? First thing first, what is our goal here? Often now we know how banks think, we know how banks work, and what are the problems with the crypto payments. We need to make sure that we give as little headache to the bank as possible. No headache to the bank, no headache to you. You need to appear as low risk as possible. Even though that you have a high risk operation, you need to make sure that in the eyes of the bank, you are the lowest risk as possible, because they need to understand clearly the business, the operation, the money flow, to make sure that you have impeccable KYC and KYB document, as Johannes mentioned, put it together and have a ready-made compliance file, which is ready to be sent to the bank, because they need to understand that you're not only fully legal, which is obvious, but you don't even have a possibility of wrongdoing. And this is what the bank wants to see. They don't want to see even the possibility of wrongdoing. So if you're operating under a jurisdiction which doesn't need a license or doesn't have a licensing legislative framework around that jurisdiction, and you say that, yes, I'm legal and it's great because I don't need to submit any kind of reports, yes, but no, because the bank wants to see you're submitting those reports. The bank wants to see that there is no even possibility of you doing any kind of tax evasion assistance or, God forbid, any kind of illicit transactions, money laundering and whatnot, because then their operation as a bank, as a financial institution is on the line, and they will get the penalty for that. So let's mention a couple of words about what is the ideal setup. As an online business, the bank always wants to see where is the director, where is the company, and where are your customers. And they want to see a clear, easy to understand setup and payment flow. Why? Because if your director is sitting, as you mentioned, in France, your company should be in France paying French taxes, and you should ideally service French customers who are falling under the French VAT. This is what they want to see. I know that life is not that easy, and life is a bit more difficult than that sometimes, but if you present a clean and easy to understand setup, as little companies as possible, as little shareholding ownership structure as possible, easy, clean, light to understand, that's what they want to see. And very important, try to avoid offshore. I know offshore was a very good friend of ours for a long, long time, and it was a very good opportunity to legally optimize your taxes. The bank doesn't want to see that. The bank does not want to assist you in any way paying less tax. So if this is your aim, be careful, because you might actually pay more on the banking than you save on taxation. When it comes to activity, you have to have a very clear business plan with financial projections. You need to have a very clear payment flow, which makes sense. So for example, if you're a consultant company, don't put set prices on the website like 500 euro per an advice and accept banks to give you a merchant account where clients can pay you by Visa or MasterCard, because it just doesn't make sense. You know, consultant companies don't work like that, one advice, 500 euros kind of thing. So try to set up a way how you accept payments from your own clients, how you pay your supplier in a way which makes sense for the compliance officer in the bank. So for example, when we have a marketplace and you say that that's great, I've got one side the customers and other side the buyers, I'm in the middle holding everyone's fund, deducting my commission. Be very careful that you do not keep any funds on behalf of any third parties without a license, because it's going to obviously get rejected. You always need to see what is the legislative framework in that country when you're operating about handling funds on behalf of third parties. And of course, needless to say, you need to filter out and understand all your target areas to make sure that you are not selling any products or services there which might be ending up sold illegally. So when we are talking about adult entertainment, make sure that you're not selling it to Muslim countries. When you're selling gambling activities, make sure that you have a relevant license locally, and so on and so forth. So many times the bank wants to see the license or legal opinion at least to make sure that you are doing everything as it should be. And many times they also want to see the manufacturer or reseller agreements as well to make sure that you are acting everything legally and you are getting all your products from alleged sources, meaning no one's going to die from your products, right? Or no one's going to get hurt from your products. When it comes to website, have a look at it. The overall look and feel, I know it's very subjective, but it has to feel right. It has to encourage your clients to give their card details, to send money to you, make sure that there are no typos, you've got reasonable prices, and you've got a clear indication of who operates the website or what type of license you have, because in case that the client has any complaint or problems, there is a clear indication of how to contact you. They understand what is the privacy policy, how you're using their data, what are the terms and conditions, and so on and so forth. I know it sounds obvious, but many, many times we see the clients that the website just does not have this overall look and feel and missing the basic information, which then unfortunately results to direct rejection of the banking. And we have to start from the beginning, which is always harder to try it for the second time. We mentioned documentation, but let's go through again. You need to have a license or a legal opinion in case that they're asking for it. Company documents have to be up to date. Usually it's maximum 90 days. So don't try to open an account with your passport, which expired, or a utility bill from last year. The key personnel, shareholder and directors, know your customer documentation have to be always clear. Utility bill, if you're, for example, living with your partner or parents and you don't have a utility bill under your name, don't even try to open any kind of accounts with a alleged bank, because it's not going to get accepted. If you are handling funds, you have to have a very strict AML and KYC policy internally. And of course, don't forget the data and the website safety. In case that the people are giving their data for you, you need to make sure that the data is handled safely. So when it comes to crypto, I just want to tell you an interesting story. I had a client who had a big shipping company, and he told me that during this crypto craze, he invested 500 euros in Kraken. He gets 20 euros as a profit out of it, so he withdrew 520 back to his bank account. And then he got a phone call from a bank, and they told him that now you're belonging to a higher risk category because you're dealing with crypto. Therefore, we are restricting your loan application, your mortgage application, and overall your banking is being monitored and will end up paying higher fees. So obviously the guy had a bit of a heart attack, and he did not expect this, but that is a very common case, unfortunately. So try to use crypto only when it's needed, only when it's justified, because you might end up paying more for the banking or being placed as a higher risk company or a higher risk potential for the banks for absolutely no reason. Always pre-alert the bank in case that you want to on-ramp or off-ramp any kind of crypto-related payments to a crypto exchange. You need to do your due diligence on the sender and the funds in case you accept any crypto payments from your clients. You need to be responsible that all the funds are from legit sources and the taxation is paid accordingly. Needless to say, you need to obviously put it on your tax return as well. And if in doubt, always ask your lawyer for a license or a legal opinion. But overall, when you're thinking about crypto, I know that there is no regulation, and I know now we have an opportunity to take advantage of this least regulation, but always think fiat, because sooner or later it will be treated as traditional fiat currency, and the same rules and regulations will apply to crypto payments. So do a favor to your bank and always treat crypto payments as it was fiat payments, in order to avoid any kind of misunderstanding as problems in the future. So just to summarize what we mentioned today, scammers and criminals obviously have harder times nowadays, and everything is for the better good, because this encourages people to pay their fair bit in taxation, make sure that they are only transferring money in a legit and proper legal way. Taxes obviously must be paid. Try to think ahead, even when you're doing any kind of tax planning, that it is indeed legitimate. And you have to show a clear activity setup and payment flow, not only for your bank, but for all kind of partners that you're dealing with. If you need any kind of payment advice or payment consulting help, you can always reach me at viktoria@pspangels.com or Skype me at Viktoria Soltesz, or ask your questions. Now, here we've got a Q&A session. So we are here with Johannes to reply to all your questions and see what we can reply to you. So let's see, maybe we can start reading out a couple of questions from the audience. Johannes, I think it could be a good question for you. Swiss banks transmit account data at the request of the US tax authorities, but you said that the bank does not disclose the data. Can you please answer maybe to this question to Oleg?
Well, I said that Swiss banks don't disclose the data of people who live in Switzerland. With America, there's a very specific situation. Now, in the media, America seems to be the good guy. They're the police of the world, they're the good guy. When you look at some statistics, you see that America has by far the highest incarceration rate worldwide. 7 times as many people sit in prison in America than in Switzerland. There's the question, is the law enforcement stronger? Or do they need more law enforcement because they have more criminals? For me, high incarceration rate means automatically there are more convicted criminals. When you have more convicted criminals, of course, the government is stricter. So they want the data of all other countries and enforce that because they have the military power to bring these people into their atmosphere. Therefore, basically, many countries, and especially also Switzerland, finally cannot manage to keep the data away from America. Especially those countries where the GDP has a certain percentage of exports to America. So when a country exports a lot and a country has a financial sector, whatever, then the Americans can simply close the business, and sanctions are much more strong than with a country that has no relation. And therefore, Switzerland, I'm originally from Austria, but I have business since 30 years in Switzerland. And my opinion is quite simple. In my company, no American customer. That's a clear answer. We let every customer confirm you are not American citizen, you are not American resident.
Yes, it's an extra step of the KYC and AML that your company is doing to obviously filter out the.
But the argument is not that the Americans are so strong and I'm behind, but you have 7 times as many convicted criminals, so 7 times as much money laundering risk.
Well, That's clear. We've got another question from Alexei. What Swiss bank do you recommend for crypto asset allocation for non-Swiss resident clients, if possible at all?
Well, knocking doors. In fact, I have mentioned these four, and then there's in addition the Frick Bank in Vaduz. It's, as you said, it's a question of their current portfolio, what they want to do. But it's also a question of the amount. It is when somebody comes with a very good business for the bank and documents that it's clean, they have just earned money with the crypto assets, then the bank is in a different position than when it's not so clear where it comes from.
Agreed. And many times these bigger banks are filtering out even startups or lower volume clients. So many times in my experience, I see that the client has all the paperwork in place and they've got the great AML and KYC policy, they've got all the licenses, but they are only transacting through, I don't know, 50 or 100,000 per month. So bigger banks are rather not take this kind of risk because the amount of profit that they can generate on like 100,000 monthly volume simply does not work for them.
But
so
generally, I want to add that I experienced also a certain other risk for the clients. And that is a form which I call espionage by compliance. Mm-hmm. There are people who sit in a compliance department who let the clients explain everything and then go to their friends and ask them to do the business themselves and give a share to the compliance officer. Of course, I don't mention now names and situations, but this is a certain danger which we cannot avoid.
Yes, unfortunately. Maybe if you're signing an NDA, but then again, how are you taking the bank on to the court?
I don't even know the compliance officer who checks my papers. How can I let him sign an NDA?
That's true. Exactly.
So we have no chance. We have to give the information in a way that they cannot make the business themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But what are the general rules, let's say, for taxation for crypto assets in Switzerland? Alexei was asking this question. It's quite an interesting one.
Well, it's a little bit complicated. Let's say private people and companies. Mm-hmm. First, private people. Generally, crypto assets, like, for example, when I have a painting, I have an asset, and when I sell it after some years, and I'm not a professional trader, then it's tax-free. However, when I have an asset and I am a professional trader, then it's like a private enterprise and I have to pay tax. That's on the private level. For companies, the crypto assets have to be distinguished if that is seen like a currency or if this is seen like an inventory. Like say Bitcoin is seen like a currency. So you buy and sell, and at the end of the year, the valuation is the valuation of the price at the end of the year. So for example, if you purchased it for a price of whatever it is now, $20,000, and at the end of the year it's 40,000, then in this case, there's 20,000 profit in that year, and that is subject to corporate income tax. Now, on the other hand, if that is a special token for a NFT or something, it qualifies similar to an inventory. That inventory has to be evaluated either at the historic purchase price and procurement costs, or at the lower price if it fell below that at the end of the year. So when you purchase such a cryptocurrency for the $20,000 and you have it at the end of the year and the value is 40,000, it stays valuated at 20,000. Now, for companies that have a large amount of transactions. It is, of course, possible not to book every transaction, but to see the whole portfolio at the wallet like a black box. You say black box value at the beginning of the period, black box value at the end of the period, then what comes from outside into the black box or the wallet, and what goes out for example, payments to the owner or also payments to suppliers or whatever. Like an inventory, it can be seen like a black box, and the transactions between it, they can be, they need not to be calculated. However, in case of an audit, they must be possible to show. The only thing what we have to do at this is, for example, at the end, to see the inventory of the end values and say, okay, the whole portfolio started at, let's say, 500,000, it went up to 800,000. Now from this, we see always the purchase value of those which are evaluated at inventory value. Let's say we have a value increase of 150,000 of such assets that are like a currency, and 150,000 of such assets that are like an inventory. Then we can say the total increase in the black box of the wallet is 300,000. However, the increase of those that are evaluated with historic purchase costs is 150, so we deduct it from the 300,000, and the taxable profit in the company is the remaining 150,000. That's how it works.
Got you. And the NFTs, what is the legal and tax treatment on NFTs in Switzerland, or everything falls under crypto asset category?
Well, I'm very careful what I say to this, because we get a lot of different things that are called NFTs. It is a blockchain technology. In fact, a blockchain technology allows a certain part of a whole. So let's say you have a painting, you divide it in 1,000 pieces and you sell the pieces in a way that the owner is registered on a blockchain in the same way like a ground register. So in that case, the underlying element is a painting. In this case, it's like an inventory. But there are other NFTs that allow to change, and then it's more than a security. So it's a quite special knowledge, and I'm not expert, but we have some experts. And the main question is this token exchangeable or not exchangeable? And there's still some open questions how it works. Because, for example, we asked the lawyer if there is a supermarket and the supermarket gives gift vouchers, or the shopping palace gives gift vouchers out. And with the gift voucher, you cannot just buy a jean, you can also buy a shirt or sweets or whatever. Now, according to this, that would be a security according to the FINMA regulation. But these supermarkets and shopping centers, they don't submit money laundering and whatever things. So there is a certain area where nobody really knows how it's regulated. Therefore, our recommendation is quite clear. Prepare the papers, ask a lawyer how to optimize it, submit it to the FINMA, and let them decide how they see it.
Exactly, and every case is different, so it has to be supported by all the explanation of the payment funds flow and yes, how these assets will be treated, where they will be kept, and so on and so forth. So many times we see that a bank's own internal compliance decides if it's good enough or not. So there is no rule or the unified acceptance for these kind of questions. Every case has to be treated differently, and then the bank's own compliance officer will be signing off.
We have here, for example, an interesting case of a painter who came to us and said how we do it. He's a famous man. He makes a painting, but he doesn't sign it. And then later, when the cryptos is sold, he wants to sign the painting so that the assets of the crypto assets increases high, and he has the advantage not to pay tax for selling the painting, but then to have a tax-free crypto profit. And we still don't have any fixed answer from the tax authorities to this.
Interesting case, yes, definitely. How about the charities? We've got another question here. What are the taxation rules for crypto asset donations for charities? Is it treated as fiat donations? Does it make any difference? Is it donation using crypto asset or fiat?
Yeah, that is the famous story. It depends, of course, who receives the charities. And if this is a non-profit organization, there are some cases where it's tax-free. But there is what I said in the presentation. There were some foundations that was challenged because they said there's no evidence that the people are donators and not investors, and there's no evidence that they don't want a return. And that's one of the consequences if it qualifies as taxable or not.
Yes, yes.
There are permanent court cases.
We got a question here that I mentioned that the banks are semi-governmental, and the question is that aren't banks privately owned? Most of them list them on the stock exchange. Yes, but obviously banks need to adhere to the regulator, which is the central bank, and the central bank is obviously controlled and regulated by the different governments. So when we are talking about macro and microeconomics, we hear that the banks are the ones who are executing all these kind of decisions, what the economists are making decisions in the government. So even though that, yes, they are privately owned, they have to adhere to certain rules and regulations, which is made by the government. So that's why I mentioned that these are semi-governmental. And I also said that the report income, that they report income to the tax authorities, and in EU what they report, and between member states of residents of EU member states residing in other member state about the interest earned. Yes, so there is a reporting back. Obviously, different countries have different systems and different level of reporting standards, but the idea is to harmonize everything. So in case that you owe money to the government in Germany, I should know this in Cyprus. And if you have millions on the bank account in Cyprus, I should know that in France. So the bank's duty indeed is to submit the reports on the transactions, and the bank's responsibility to make sure that these reports are up to date and it's valid, but also it's the person and the company's duty to declare income to the tax authority. So it's basically a double checking kind of standard, and I'm sure that Switzerland is also part of that. So as I said at the end of my presentation, it's harder nowadays to be a criminal, and it's even getting harder to cheat tax, obviously, to stop all these illegit transactions.
I want to add, if you allow, some
Please.
Philosophical point of view. You have here the situation that, especially in the last 10-15 years, there was a small fight between those who have the money and those who have the political power. And this fight already exists for centuries. And it was, for example, even last century, the brothers Hunt made the famous corner of the silver, and they would be the richest people in the world. And what happened was that the American government simply declared their contracts for invalid, and the whole thing broke. So whenever people in the business get too powerful, the governments do something to stop them. We can say it's good or bad. It's not the question. The question is it happens like this. You see it now probably with Tesla, with Apple, with whatever. There's one exception. Few people know this, but you can see it in books and the internet. And that was hundreds of years ago, a German guy called Jakob Fugger. And Jakob Fugger built up a system where he earned huge amounts of money. He financed the Emperor Maximilian to make the wars and like this. And he managed to get the money from the Vatican. So the church gave him the money. The emperor gave him the silver as a mortgage. And with this, he became by far the richest man who ever lived, because he was the only man in history who managed to avoid this trap, because the Emperor Maximilian did not dare to make any law that allows the church, that forces the church to lose all his money.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. I think we ran out of time, but thank you very much, Johannes, that joining us today, and thank you for everyone who was part of this this webinar. I think we explained a couple of things to you, and if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm sure that Johannes is also expecting your questions as much as I do, and looking forward to meeting you later. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to answer all the questions, but please feel free to reach out to us directly, and we will do our best to do so. So thank you so much for participating. Thank you very much, Johannes, to be with us, and thank you for everyone. Looking forward to seeing you in other Bosco conferences in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.